And the sperm, it belonged to a black tech millionaire known for lawsuits, discretion, and never donating to anyone. But now a virgin was pregnant with his child, and the world would never be the same. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Real Father's story. She went in for fertility counseling and left with a life inside her. Emma Grace. Whitmore was 24. Graduate student, shy, conservative, from a small town where reputations stuck like pollen in spring. She wasn't dating, wasn't sleeping around. She was in fact still a virgin, though she'd never said that aloud outside her diary. But she was also sick. A rare autoimmune condition meant her ovaries were failing fast. Doctors told her by 25 she might lose the ability to carry a child. So her mom took her to a private fertility clinic in Seattle. Just to freeze your eggs, they said. No pressure, just options. Emma agreed, quietly, cautiously. She never expected anything more. The procedure was routine until it wasn't. There was a misfiled chart, a mislabeled tube, an exhausted intern who mixed one protocol with another. And somewhere in a vault of high-security sperm donations, a vial was pulled from the wrong shelf. It belonged to Micah Jordan. Flash to Micah. Jordan, age 34. Black, brilliant, untroubled. A tech mogul who kept his life tight. No kids, no public dating history, just money control and a contract with one of the world's top fertility banks to store his genetic legacy in case of terminal illness. He never donated, not to anyone, not for money, not for charity, only for himself. 2 weeks later, Emma's body felt different. Nausea, sore chest, a sudden aversion to peppermint tea, her favorite. Her doctor said it was just hormones from the egg retrieval process, but a blood test revealed something else. She wasn't prepping for a future pregnancy. She was already pregnant. That's not possible, Emma whispered. There was no insemination, no embryo transfer. I never signed for that. I never agreed. The nurse looked pale, left the room. Within hours, administrators swarmed. We're so sorry. There's been a critical incident. You're safe. The fetus is healthy. But there was a vial mix-up. Emma could barely breathe. What does that mean? And that's when they said his name. Micah Jordan. Her lips trembled. Isn't he that billionaire from the news? She was a virgin, a student, alone. Now she was carrying the child of a man who didn't know she existed. From a race, a world, and a level of power she'd never touched. And she wasn't sure if the worst part was the pregnancy or the truth she'd have to face alone. Her pregnancy was a mistake, but the world didn't care about the context. The clinic offered hush money within 48 hours. We understand how traumatic this is. We'll cover all medical costs. A private settlement. 6 figures. No press. Emma didn't sign, not because she was greedy, but because she didn't know who she was becoming. Every time she looked in the mirror, she didn't see herself. She saw a girl with no power, now carrying the child of a man who had too much. Meanwhile, Micah Jordan received a call. It came through legal channels. There's been a breach, his lawyer said. Your sample. It was used accidentally. Micah's world froze. Used how? Inseminated into a woman. She's pregnant, 7 weeks along. We're dealing with it. He didn't respond at first. Name. Emma Grace Whitmore. Is she suing? Not yet. He hung up, booked a jet, flew to Seattle. Flashback Micah, age 19. He'd grown up with a mother who'd been forced into motherhood too young. A father who left before Micah turned 2. A neighborhood where power meant muscle, not money. Micah swore he'd never be a father unless he chose it. Everything in his life was about choice, until now. Back to Emma alone in her apartment. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Micah Jordan. Her breath caught. I didn't mean for this. Neither did I. Silence. Are you okay? He asked. Not harsh, not soft, just curious. I don't know. I'd like to meet, privately, just to talk. Is that legal? No lawyers, just two people, trying to understand what the hell this is. She hesitated. Okay, their first meeting. A quiet diner outside the city. He came alone. No suit, no watch. Just a man in jeans, nervous but composed. She wore a long cardigan over a plain dress. Eyes down, shoulders hunched. You look young, he said. I am. You're really... Yes, she whispered. I'm really pregnant. And I'm really a virgin. He blinked. That shouldn't even be medically possible. Apparently it is. And now, I have a life inside me I didn't ask for. From a man I've only seen in headlines. A long pause. Do you want to keep it? He asked gently. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know. But I know it's not just mine anymore. And that's when the walls began to crack. Not because of love, but because ownership was never the point. Now it was about responsibility. He tried to stay cold until he saw the ultrasound. Micah had walked away from boardrooms. He'd shut down competitors. He once fired a CFO over a single missed decimal. But nothing in his carefully calculated life prepared him for the grainy, black and white image he saw on that monitor. A flicker, a flutter, a heartbeat. Not theory, not legal risk. A child. His, hers, theirs. Emma sat beside him, hands clenched in her lap, barely breathing. You don't have to stay, she whispered. I didn't ask for any of this. Neither did I. She turned her face toward the screen. But it's here. It's real. Micah stared at it like he was watching himself. Before money, before isolation, before armor. What are you going to do? He asked quietly. I want to keep it, she admitted. But I'm terrified of the pregnancy, of becoming a mother, when I still don't even know who I am. Flashback. Emma, age 14. Her town called girls like her good, soft-spoken, clean, marriage material. They praised her modesty, but never asked what she wanted. Now she was carrying a child of a man from a world they didn't understand and would never accept. Back to Micah, his face hardening. They're going to eat you alive when this gets out, he said. They, everyone, media, family, strangers on the internet. And you... I'm not running, he said. Later that night, Emma's apartment. She opened her email. There it was, a draft statement from the clinic's legal team. Cold, sanitized, signed NDA. $850 settlement. She stared at the number, then at her belly. She clicked decline. Meanwhile, Micah in his penthouse. He pulled out the contract he'd signed years ago with the Sperm Bank. Buried in small print, donor retains zero parental responsibility. He could walk away, scot-free, but for the first time in years, he didn't want to. Because when he saw that flicker on the screen, it reminded him of the one person who'd never abandoned him as a child. His mother. You deserve better, he whispered to the empty room. And maybe, so does she. She said no to the money and yes to herself. For the first time, Emma didn't sign the NDA. Her mother begged her to reconsider. Do you know what kind of scandal this could become? He's a black billionaire. You're a white girl from Ellensburg. This is going to get ugly. Think of the baby. I am thinking of the baby, Emma whispered. And that's why I'm not taking their money. Because what scared her more than the press was her child growing up thinking they were a mistake someone paid to hide. Meanwhile, Micah met with his board. His team pushed him to separate completely. This was a violation of your contract. You don't owe her anything. There are precedents for this. He stood, slowly, calm. I'm not interested in legal distance. I'm interested in personal responsibility. Silence. This isn't about headlines. This is about a human being who carries half of me, who never asked to be created. And a woman brave enough to carry that life, even when she had every reason to say no. Flashback. Micah's mother, age 22. She once told him, "The strongest thing you'll ever do as a man is stay." Back to Emma. Her town turns on her. Whispers in church. People crossing the street. Someone vandalized her car with the word whore. And the cruelest part, they didn't even ask what happened. They just assumed that she was lying, that she seduced someone, that she wanted attention. She cried in the grocery aisle, in the bathtub, on the bathroom floor. Until one day her doorbell rang. Micah stood there. Black coat, gloves, no entourage. "I saw the news. I told them nothing." "I know." He reached into his coat and handed her a folder. Inside, paternity acknowledgement, co-parenting plan, health coverage, all optional. You choose what you need. What you don't, you burn. Her lips trembled. "Why are you being kind?" "Because this isn't your burden alone anymore. And because I can't control how the world sees me, but I can control how you see me." She broke down in his arms, not because she was in love, but because for the first time since the nightmare began, someone saw her as more than a vessel or a victim. He saw her as a mother. And for Emma, that changed everything. He didn't try to own her, he just stood beside her. Emma didn't expect him to keep showing up. She figured Micah would check a few boxes, legal, financial, medical, and then disappear into his polished, impossible life. But he didn't. Instead, he came to doctor's appointments, sat in waiting rooms, never once brought cameras or assistants. He brought books, tea, and quiet. At one ultrasound, the tech asked, "Is this the father?" Emma paused. Micah said nothing. "Yes," she finally answered. Micah didn't flinch. He just looked at the screen and smiled. Not big, not performative, just honest. "That's our kid," he whispered. "Wild, right?" Emma nodded. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he said. "But I'm learning. And I'd rather learn beside you than apart from you." Flashback. Micah, age 12. He once asked his mom why his dad never came to visit. She said, "Because some men are afraid of the things they create. But you'll be the kind of man who stays when it's inconvenient." He remembered that every time he watched Emma struggle with back pain, every time she fell asleep mid-sentence, every time she tried to stay composed in front of cameras, but broke the second the door closed. One night, her handling the press, a reporter ambushed her at the clinic. "Do you think this child will be black or white? Are you raising it alone? Was this all a stunt to get money?" She froze. Micah appeared. "You can ask me your questions," he said calmly, "but you don't get to bully her. Not on my watch." The reporter backed off. Later in the car, Emma stared at him. "Why do you care?" "Because I know what it feels like to have people write your story before you speak a word." "And what's my story?" "You're the woman who chose life in the middle of a storm. And that makes you the strongest person in this whole damn circus." She smiled for the first time in weeks, not because things were fixed, but because someone finally stood with her, not just near her. He never touched her but made her feel safer than anyone ever had. By the third trimester, Emma wasn't afraid of the baby anymore. She was afraid of losing Micah. Because even though they weren't lovers, weren't even exactly friends, he'd become something deeper, present. He didn't hover. He didn't force. He just showed up with quiet eyes and warm silence. Flashback. Emma, age 8. She once fell off her bike and cried until her throat went raw. Her father just told her to toughen up. But her neighbor, old Mrs. Keats, simply sat on the curb with her. Didn't say a word. just waited until the sobs stopped. That's who Micah became. Not a fixer, not a savior, a presence. One night, baby kicked for the first time. Emma called him. "Sorry, it's late." "You okay?" It moved, she said, tears in her voice. Like it knew I was scared. He didn't offer science. He didn't quote biology. He just said, "You're not alone." The next day, he drove her to a checkup. Rain poured. She slipped getting into the car. He caught her. Their eyes locked. For a moment, just one. The air shifted. Not lust, not longing, but a beginning. "You don't have to do this forever," she whispered. "You've already done more than I ever expected." "I didn't start this because I had to," he replied. "I kept showing up because I wanted to." In the waiting room, she rested her head on his shoulder. She didn't ask. He didn't flinch. And in that tiny gesture, she realized something terrifying. She trusted him, with her child, with her fear, with herself. To the outside world, they were a scandal. Tabloids, talk shows, speculation. But to each other, they were just two people learning to live with a story neither of them wrote, but were finally learning how to own. Together, the night he stayed, and she didn't ask him to leave. It wasn't planned. Emma had a small scare, cramps, a sudden drop in blood pressure. Micah rushed her to the hospital. False alarm, dehydration, stress. But by the time they got back to her apartment, it was 2 a.m. She could barely keep her eyes open. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said. She didn't argue. Didn't need to. In the middle of the night, she woke to the sound of him humming. Micah was in the kitchen, making tea, humming something soft and strange. A lullaby. "You sing?" she asked, voice cracked. He smiled without turning. "My mom used to hum that when she couldn't afford heat. Said warmth wasn't always in the walls, sometimes it was in the sound." Emma leaned against the door frame. "Thank you for staying." "I didn't even think about leaving," he said. And in that moment, something silent between them cracked open. Not lust, not rescue, not obligation. Intimacy. Flashback Micah, age 6. His mother once wrapped herself around him like a blanket during a storm. "If I go, you go too," she'd whispered. That was the kind of protection he carried now. The next morning he made her breakfast. Pancakes. Sloppy. Slightly burned. She laughed harder than she had in months. "You're a billionaire," she teased. "You could have hired a private chef to deliver this." "Yeah," he said. "But then you wouldn't have known how bad I am at flipping pancakes." Tragic. Historical. She grinned. And then quietly, she reached across the table and took his hand. "Just once. Just enough. Micah, yeah. You make this feel less like survival, and more like a story I might one day be proud to tell." Later that day, they sat together choosing baby names. It wasn't official. It wasn't romantic. But it was real. They circled names on paper napkins, laughed at the weird ones, paused at the meaningful ones. And by the end, they didn't need to say what they both knew. This child would never be a mistake. She gave birth in silence, but he made sure she didn't go home alone. The contractions started just after midnight. Emma didn't scream. She didn't panic. She just whispered, "It's time." Micah was already awake, bag in hand, car warm. He'd been ready for weeks, but nothing prepared him for this. Not the moment she grabbed his hand mid-push. Not the first cry from lungs, not yet a minute old. Not the way he cried harder than the baby. The room was quiet when it was done. A nurse laid the infant, half black, half white, onto Emma's chest. She looked up at Micah, tears streaking her cheeks. "She's here," Emma whispered. "She's really here." Micah swallowed hard. "You did that. All of it. Every second. You carried her." Emma smiled weakly. "We carried her, even when we didn't know what we were doing." Later that week, a press release went out. Short, elegant, honest. Through a rare and deeply unfortunate medical error, A pregnancy occurred without informed consent between two unrelated parties. After careful reflection, both parties chose to raise the child together in shared partnership, respect, and support. No scandal, no drama, just truth. Flash forward 1 year later. Emma pushed a stroller through the park. Micah walked beside her baby bag slung across his shoulder. People watched them curious, unsure what box to place them in. Were they married? Dating co-parents? Emma didn't explain. Micah didn't offer context, because what they had couldn't be summarized in a sentence. It wasn't romance. It was intention. The baby Lena Grace Jordan. She had Emma's pale blue eyes, Micah's dimples, and a laugh that stopped strangers mid-step. One afternoon, while holding her on his chest, Micah looked at Emma. "We didn't fall in love, did we?" "No," Emma said. "We grew into something better, something real, something chosen." Epilogue 3 years later. Lena ran across a schoolyard, two parents cheering her on from opposite sides of the fence. Emma ran toward her with a juice box. Micah opened the car door. They high-fived in the middle. "She's gonna be a lawyer," he said. "Please no," Emma laughed. "Let her be something soft." "She already is," he replied, "because she came from chaos and ended in care." They didn't plan it, didn't dream of it, didn't fall headfirst into forever. But they built a life anyway, together, with intention, with dignity, and with the only thing that ever truly matters: presence. If this story moved you, subscribe to Real Father Story, where the most unbelievable tales are real, raw, and grounded in grace.